Hey everybody, this is a very special bonus re-release. We have compiled all of our coverage of the 2014 murder of Dan Markel from what we knew back in early 2023 to the trial of Charlie Adelson, Dan's ex-brother-in-law, and the arrest of Donna Adleson, Dan's ex-mother-in-law. Now, this is all in preparation for two things. One, our next episode is going to be Dan Markel Part 2. There have been several key pieces of information that have surfaced in the last 2 years, and we want to make sure our listeners are up to date because the other thing we need to prepare for is the trial of Donna Adleson, which is currently scheduled to start in just a few weeks. A heads up, this re-release includes the original episode and 3 update episodes, 2 of which I recorded in an airport because I was too impatient to wait and get back home on a real mic to tell everyone the latest. I apologize now for the subpar audio on those airport recordings. Either way, enjoy this recap and get ready for some brand new info next week. Okay, love you, bye!
Welcome to Like Mother, Like Murder. I am Rachel.
And I'm Heather.
We bring you the good,
The badass,
and the crime.
This is Like Mother, Like Murder. So we're going to get into it, and I'm actually really excited for this because I texted Rachel the name of the people involved in this crime, and Rachel has never heard of it before. She doesn't know about this case, and it's more of like a recent case that still has some it's not completely 100% resolved. I hopefully will be able to provide updates as things come out. So today we are going to get into the case of Daniel Markel and Wendy Adelson. Wendy with an I. W-E-N-D-I. Wendy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
neither of those names sound familiar.
I was going to say, you don't know any of these, right? Okay.
No, and most of the time it's like I hear something, I'm like, oh yeah, but...
Yeah, it is a really popular case out of Florida.
Yeah.
Up and down the
Popular
state of
such
Florida.
A sad word.
I know it is,
crime.
especially in this case, because this family is just completely ripped apart. But I got a lot of the information about this case it was covered really well on this podcast called Over My Dead Body in the first season of that podcast. Their second season covers the whole Tiger King Carol Baskin drama. So I kind of want to listen to that because I haven't updated myself on that case in a long time, and it's hilarious to me, except for all of the really sad parts about those poor animals who don't deserve to be treated like that. But there's some crazy ass people. Like I said, this is out of Florida. I got a lot of my information from this podcast, the first season Over My Dead Body. And then there's a lot of good stuff, like local newspapers, and I'll post all of the links in the show notes. But let's get into it. Yes. Okay. So, July 18th, 2014, Daniel Markel, most people called him Danny. Dan Markel is shot in broad daylight in the driveway of his home. A few hours later, his ex-wife, Wendy Adelson, is brought to the police station for questioning. As they're going,
Did you start with the year? When did this happen?
2014.
You did say that. Okay.
Yeah. As they're going over the different scenarios of what could have happened, she mentioned that she was really that he was really upset when they got a divorce, but there's no way that Dan shot himself. She also says that Dan's girlfriend, Amy, has an ex who maybe doesn't like him so much. Wendy also tells police that her parents, Wendy's parents, are angry at Dan just because they had not a very happy divorce, but that it is not possible that her family would do something like this. Then she says that her brother Charlie knew Dan didn't treat her very well, and that Charlie would make jokes in bad taste, saying that he looked into hiring a hitman, but it was cheaper to just buy her a TV. So her brother Charlie bought her a TV instead, and that he would never do anything like this.
Gotcha.
She then goes on to say, quote, "If somebody tried to kill my ex-husband, then they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law." And the cop asks, regardless of who it is, and Wendy says, "I mean, it would be different if I thought it were my brother, but I don't think it was my family. Anyone outside of my immediate family, that's a tough one. But I don't think my immediate family did this. So if it's anybody else, yeah." Okay.
If it's anybody else.
Just a little bit of something to give you. The cops ask her if she thinks her brother Charlie would be capable of something like this, and she says no, he's a joker. And she says no, there's no way her family could do that. Okay. So that was July 2014. Let's rewind and get a little bit into kind of how all of this started. Okay. So Dan and Wendy, they met on J-Date. So they're both very, especially Dan, his Jewish identity was like huge to him, to his family. He was very into his Jewish heritage and his Jewish religion. And Wendy was also from a Jewish family, and they were both lawyers. They had both gone to law school, and they had a whirlwind romance, and they actually had kind of did it long distance because they were kind of in two separate places. But ultimately, Dan ended up proposing on a trip to Israel, and they were married in 2006 in a beautiful wedding, very lavish. And a few years later, they started a family. They had 2 little boys. And then eventually they moved to Florida. They moved to Tallahassee, Florida, because Dan was offered a really good job as a professor at a college there. Wendy was also offered a position because they knew, like, hey, Dan's probably not going to come unless we also give something for his wife. So she was also offered a kind of contract professor position. He was like on a tenure track professor position at the same college. But Wendy wasn't very happy with the move. She was further away from her family. Her family was from the Miami area, and her family was real close. So her family were her 2 parents, Donna and Harvey, and then her brother Charlie, who also, she had an older brother Charlie, who also lived in the Miami area. They were all very close. There's also another brother, the oldest brother, but he actually didn't live in the state. And he at one point had kind of had a small falling out with the family. So he seemed like he was a little bit more removed, but the Donna, Harvey, older brother Charlie, and Wendy, they were very close, all from the Miami area. So when they moved to Tallahassee, when Wendy moved to Tallahassee for Dan's job, it was tough on them.
Right.
Okay. So Wendy actually started writing a book, a fiction book about a wife who wasn't very happy in her new life, in a new town, and in a marriage that she wasn't very happy with, that she kind of felt was like a loveless marriage. And well, so she said it was a fiction book, but there seemed to be a lot of real life things coming. Well, and so Dan actually publicly promoted her book. He had this like pretty popular blog. You know, he was a very, in the lawyer circle, I guess, pretty popular, well-known guy. And he actually promoted her book on his blog, but he never actually read it. He never actually read his wife's novel, but maybe he should have. Because in 2012, so they'd been married now for about 6 years, Wendy calls him while Dan is on a business trip to New York and says, "I'm leaving you."
Yeah.
And she packs up the house, packs up the kids, and bounces, leaving their divorce papers on the bed.
Jeez.
So that's a move right there, leaving these divorce papers right on the bed. And she bounces, and he doesn't even, and she stays in the Tallahassee area, and he kind of goes to the boys' school during drop off and pickup, trying to like catch her because she kind of just bounced and said bye. Like, he didn't even know where they were staying for the first couple weeks after she left him. And he was devastated. He was angry about the whole thing, but he was trying to win her back at first. Like, he was telling friends, he was telling family that he thinks he could get her back, you know, but it didn't end up working out that way. And it actually ended up getting pretty ugly. So like I said, they were both lawyers. So their divorce got pretty intense. And Dan was actually doing a lot of like his stuff. Neither of them were divorce lawyers, but being a lawyer, like, they know certain things. It got pretty intense, like a lot of like motions being filed and a lot of things, this, that, and the other. Eventually it did end in like a settlement where Dan got the house. Wendy got like a lump sum and then was getting paid, you know, child support as well. And they shared 50-50 custody of the boys.
Oh.
Wendy wanted to move closer to her family in southern Florida. So they're in Tallahassee, like North Florida. She wanted to move herself and the boys down to the Miami area so she could be closer to her family. But Dan was like, no, we share 50-50 custody.
Right.
And the judge was like, look, there's no reason you're not giving to Wendy. The judge was saying, look, you're not giving a good enough reason to have to relocate these boys.
Right.
Their whole life is here. Their father is here. No. And so Wendy had to keep the boys up in Tallahassee, which didn't go over well with her, right? She didn't want to be there in the first place. She divorces him and now she can't move. It didn't go over well with her. It didn't go over well with her family, who, like I said, they were from the Miami area and they were pretty well known. They ran a pretty successful like dentist business down there. The dad, Harvey, was a dentist. Charlie was also not a dentist, but like a periodontist or like something like that. And he, you know, he kind of helped take over the family business. But the family, so the grandparents, Donna and Harvey, Wendy's parents, they would drive about 6 hours every week to help Wendy with the kids. Even though they had the marriage settlement and it, you know, was signed off and everything, they continued to fight about custody of the kids and money. Dan even said that Wendy's family was getting too involved, and he filed like a motion or petition or something to say that Donna, the grandmother, Wendy's mom, shouldn't be allowed to have unsupervised visits with the boys because she said that he heard from his kids that she was talking bad about him. Basically, grandma was talking shit and the boys told
stop the visitations, though. But,
exactly.
I mean,
and
also,
like,
keep your personal shit out of it, man. Like,
keep it out of it. Like, these kids have been through enough. They're from a separated home. Stop talking shit. And these kids are young at this point. Like, these kids at this point, I think the youngest was like 2. So there is no need to be pulling
like
your children into that.
Never be a conversation had in front of these children. That's
100%. 100%. Especially as a grandparent, like, you're even further removed. Like, I understand that you're there helping out your daughter, and that's admirable, but, like, you're not those kids' parents, so you have even less of a say. But he basically was like, she's not allowed to have unsupervised visits because she keeps talking shit about me, and that's not good for the kids. And that's true. It's true. Don't be talking shit. At one point, it got to a point where the grandparents, so Donna is the grandma, Harvey is the grandpa, they actually told their daughter Wendy, they said, give Dan $1 million. Give him $1 million to let you take the boys down to Miami with us. And that obviously, that plan never happened. But they were desperate to be like, to get Wendy and the boys out of Tallahassee. So it was pretty ugly. But they actually both started dating other people. Wendy started dating someone. Dan started dating someone. It was going well with these other people. Like, they started to try to, like, move on. Then, July 18th, 2014. So this is 2 years after the divorce first started going down. So a neighbor calls police because they saw Dan's car in his driveway with the garage door open. He saw that, and then when he kind of came back a little bit later, he said the car and the garage were still in the same position, and that's when he noticed that the window of the car, the driver's side window, was shattered, and Dan was inside, and he was unresponsive. Dan was actually
he was shot in the car?
In the car.
Oh, okay. When you said it earlier, I thought he was, like, walking and he was shot and, like, on the ground. Nope. I'm like, how did the neighbor not see him on the ground?
I know. He was still inside the car. Okay. So Dan was actually on the phone with a friend when he pulls up to his house, and he tells the friend on the phone, he goes, hold on, there's someone in my driveway. I don't know who they are. And then the friend said they heard kind of like the shots. Oh so he shot 2 times at close range. He's actually rushed to the hospital. So he's still alive, and he's rushed to the hospital, but the doctor said, there's nothing they could really do. He did stay at the hospital for a few hours. Some friends and family were able to come and to kind of say their goodbyes, but by the next day, he had passed. The day that Dan was shot, on July 18th, 2014, Wendy was at lunch with her friends when the cop shows up and brings her into the police station. They don't tell her exactly what's happening. She doesn't really know what happened or what's going on. But while she's waiting, she listens to a voice message from, I think it was like their old realtor. And the old realtor is like, hey, I was just driving by, your old street, and they said that there was a shooting, and I just, was a little concerned. And she's playing, and Wendy plays this voicemail for the officer. So the realtor just says, hey, there was a shooting on your old street. Just wanted to call, check in, make sure everything's okay. And that's when the cop tells her, there was a shooting on your street, your ex-husband has been shot, and he's not going to survive. And Wendy, she breaks down, and it sounds to like, I was listening, like they have the tapes of the interview, and it sounds really sincere. She breaks down. She's like, oh my gosh, who could have done this? I can't believe this kind of thing. A memorial service is held just a few days later, and Wendy and their 2 sons and Donna and Harvey, they are all there, and they're actually they have security with them. Like, some off-duty Tallahassee cops are with them that they had hired for security, because at this point, Dan was shot. They have no idea who did it. They have no idea why it was done. So they have security there at the memorial service. The next day, Wendy and the boys leave Tallahassee, and they never come back. Nobody knows. Like I said, nobody knew why Dan was murdered. They don't know who did it. No one really saw anything. Everyone that they talked to was like, he didn't have, like, enemies that were gonna do that to him. Like, he wasn't involved in crazy things like that. He was a professor.
I'm just surprised that Wendy was even able to leave the area at a time like this, because even though they were not together, typically that's not something we see.
Right.
Like, it's usually stay close. We have something going on. So
exactly. I mean, I'm sure she had an alibi for the morning, because, she had said, oh, I ran some errands. I did this and that. And I'm sure she was able to provide an alibi to show that she wasn't shooting, like, the one being doing the shooting.
Right.
But yeah, it is weird. And I mean, technically she's not leaving the state. She was staying, but it's like 6 hours away. I know, that is kind of weird. Again, like, they don't have any leads. They don't know what's going on. This dude was literally shot in broad daylight in a nice neighborhood, like right in the middle of the day. So police actually open up a tip line, and like different theories start floating around. Some people think like robbery gone wrong, but nobody went into the house. The car, they obviously could have stole the car. Right, I mean, the guy was dead, but they didn't. So they were like, no, that's probably not it. They thought maybe it's a former student of his with a grudge. Who knows? They thought maybe it was a road rage incident, because he was still in his car. Maybe he cut somebody off, and then they followed him home. And then somebody actually thought, well, maybe it has to do with this pretty controversial case that he had been a consultant on. So he was a consultant on a case that was happening in New York. So a little bit of background on that one. Basically, in some Orthodox Jewish churches, a wife cannot ask a husband for divorce. It is up to the husband to say whether or not they can get a divorce. But in New York, there was this rabbi who would basically kidnap and beat up husbands until they agreed to give their wives divorces.
That is crazy.
In
this day, in 2014.
Yeah.
Like in 2014, there's just this rabbi that's like, I've got you, bro. Or girl. But that, I mean, to me, and I know this is going to sound messed up, like, I 100% can see that back in the day, like being the normal thing.
Sure.
Like, don't worry, like, we're going to handle this for you. You're fine. I don't know why it shocks me to my core that in 2014, we have this person that you could just call and be like, I need a divorce, go beat up my husband so I could have a divorce.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's the whole thing is so crazy. I want to look into it way more. And I may actually want to like do this one for Patreon because the story is just fucking insane. You're just like, and like you said, it's 2014. When you read something like this, you're like, oh, maybe that was like in the 1900s or something like that, like early 1900s. But no, like this was happening in 2014 in New York. So
not even 10 years ago. Like that.
I know.
The other
it's
day.
Crazy.
That was yesterday.
That was yesterday. So someone was like, well, maybe it's because of the work he was doing on that case. Maybe that has something to do with it. But really, people had no idea. When they kept talking to people close to the family, they started hearing certain things. So once they started talking to friends and family who really knew Dan and Wendy and saw how bitter and ugly the divorce was, some people did say that a possible motive for Dan being killed, a few people pointed out that the Adelsons, so Wendy Adelson, she never took his last name. So she's always been Wendy Adelson, and her parents and her brother Charlie, who all live down in Miami, they would benefit from Dan's death because now there's nothing stopping Wendy from moving back. Mm-hmm. During police questioning, even Wendy said that maybe somebody did it because they knew that Dan didn't treat her well and they thought they were like basically like doing her a favor, doing it for her. And then you remember what she said what I said kind of at the beginning, where she was like about her brother and about her immediate family. Wendy's boyfriend at the time was also questioned about it. And, they looked into his alibi because, I guess he had publicly sometimes said that if he ever saw Dan in public, he might, like, he kind of threatened him because he was there and he saw all of the struggles that Wendy was going through. And so they actually questioned him too, but he had a really solid alibi. He was actually out of the state. He had receipts to prove it, blah, 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 blah. But this guy, Wendy's boyfriend, he also mentioned Wendy's family, specifically her brother Charlie. And he mentioned that he does hang out. He's a well-known dentist, like top-notch dentist in Miami, but he does hang out with some kind of shady people. But past just kind of those allegations, those kind of just secondhand statements, they don't have anything else. And the only lead that they finally get is they start looking at all of the security cameras, all of like the CCTV around town, and they notice that Dan was being followed that morning. So
Okay.
they noticed that the same car is following him, you know, from his kids' daycare where he dropped, or school where he dropped them off, to the gym where he was, and then on his way home from the gym, which is where he was shot. So they can make out the car, and they can make out kind of like the make and model, but they can't make out the driver. The windows are too tinted, and they can't make out the license plate, which is kind of crazy that they couldn't get the license plate at all.
Right.
But the one thing they do notice is that the car has one of those like toll transponder passes that you can like kind of stick in your window so that you can pass through any of the tolls without having to stop and pay.
Yeah.
And so that's the only thing that they have. So like I said, this happened, he was shot in 2014, and 2 years go by, and that's all they have. All they have is the car. And meantime, Wendy is still down in Miami with her family, with Grandma and Grandpa and Uncle Charlie. Dan's parents were trying to stay involved. They were trying to travel down to the area to see the boys. They would send them, you know, birthday gifts. They would try to ask Wendy if they could see them, but just slowly and surely it just stopped, you know, happening. And they were traveling from, I think, like Toronto or Ontario, like all the way up in Canada. They were trying to travel down. They were trying to see the boys. And like I said, Dan, his Jewish identity was very important to him, very important to his family, and also so very important that he wanted to pass that on to his sons. And the grandparents, Dan's parents, just felt like they were really losing their Jewish identity, because I guess Wendy even changed the Jewish middle name of one of the kids. And then they were saying, we don't even know if they know who the Markels are. Like, we don't really know if they even know who we are, because they said eventually they stopped being able to visit because they wouldn't be able to see them. And they're like, we send gifts, but we don't know if the boys actually get them.
Getting them. Right.
Yeah. Dan's parents are like trying to figure that out. Nothing for 2 years. So he's shot in July of 2014, killed, and for 2 years they don't have anything. Finally, in 2016, an arrest is made. I know. And it just keeps, it's like such a slow crawl,
well,
because
slow, but like, how do you even move on from, we have only the fact that there's a toll sticker in the car? That is nothing to work with.
Nothing. Exactly.
Nothing.
It's nothing.
So, anyways.
Get to work. So in 2016, finally, an arrest is made. And so basically what they had done, I think they call it like a cell dump or a cell tower dump, where they just get all of the information from the cell towers in the area, and they're just tracking it using kind of the location that they were able to track the car that had been following Dan all morning. And they are able to finally locate a phone that was in the right areas at the right time, and they tracked that phone to someone named Sigfredo Garcia. And when they look into Sigfredo Garcia, they also find someone who's kind of a known contact of his named Luis Rivera. And then when they look at Luis Rivera's phone, they also see, okay, this dude was also in the area at the same time. So now they have these two suspects. They have Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera. And when they are able to finally look into the toll transponder, what they find is, okay, there was one car that passed through the right tolls at the right time. They track it as the Prius that they know was the car, and they track it back to a rental car company out of Miami. And they find that it was Luis Rivera who had rented the car before the murder and returned it after the murder. Sigfredo Garcia is arrested, and Luis Rivera is actually already in custody. He had been picked up, 2 years before on something unrelated. He was basically kind of one of the top dogs for the Latin Kings in the Miami area. So he was being held on some federal charges related to his like gangbanging. And then they had Sigfredo Garcia also arrested. So now they have these two guys. They can track them to
So they were just
area.
doing something shady and like that. So Dan was like, wrong place, wrong time.
Wait for it. Okay.
Your face. Sorry.
So they are like, okay, so we know you two were in Tallahassee. We have been able to track your car. We know that you were following him around all morning. It's all like circumstantial. They don't have the gun. They can't place them at Dan's house. They can only like in and around the area. They just know that they were there at the right times.
Yeah.
But they don't have anything more than that. So like I said, Luis Rivera was already being held for some federal crimes related to his gangbanging. And they basically cut a deal with him. And they said, you need to tell us something if you want to potentially ever get out for this.
Mm-hmm.
So they make a deal, and he tells investigators about the murder of Dan Markel. Okay. Rivera says,
listening.
Oh, shoot, I totally just spilled my fucking coffee. Pause. This is how you know shit's about to get real, because I spilled my
Shit's
coffee.
about to hit the table.
Shit's about to get real. Okay. So Luis Rivera tells them, he says that actually in June 2014, Garcia and him rented a car, drive to Tallahassee. These two have actually known each other for a long time. They kind of grew up together. They were pretty much like best friends. And he says that one day, Garcia calls him and he's like, hey, I'm going to pick you up. We're driving to Tallahassee. And Rivera, like I said, he was like a known gang member. And he said that he was what he calls a jack boy, which means like he would just run around kind of stealing stuff from drug dealers. So he assumed, okay, he's picking me up. We're going to go rob some people. And then on the drive up there, Sigfredo Garcia tells Luis Rivera, he says, we're not on our way to rob somebody. We're on our way to kill somebody. And once they're in Tallahassee, Rivera, he kind of gets cold feet and he's like, dude, are you sure this is going to be worth it? Like, we're up here to murder someone. Like, you know, what are we getting out of this? And then they basically bail. They're like, okay, they just drive back to Miami. Oh, then a month later, Garcia calls him up and he says, look, we got to go back. We got to go back to Tallahassee. We got to get this done. So then that's when Rivera rents another car, the Prius. They drive back to Tallahassee. And Rivera tells them that what they did was they parked outside of Dan Markel's house. They followed him around town for a few hours. And when he starts to head back to his house, they pull up behind him in the driveway. Rivera says, because Rivera says he was the one driving. He says Garcia jumps out, walks up, shoots Dan twice through the window, kills him, gets back in the car, and the two drive back to Miami. So now Rachel's face is like
it's just the easiest thing to do. Like, just, all right, I did it, brush my shoulders off, get back in the car, and just drive back and carry on with my day.
So now the investigators are like, okay, why? Why did the two of you guys from Miami drive all the way to Tallahassee to murder this dude that you guys don't know?
I know someone who lives in Miami.
Who lives in Miami, Rachel?
I don't know. One of them family members. You said the brother's name a lot. So the brother? The brother knows them?
Well, we'll see. So, I mean, yes. I mean, sort of. Kind of. So Rivera tells investigators that Garcia's baby mama and on and off again girlfriend, her name is Catherine Magbanawa, I think is how you say it. People call her Katie. Rivera tells investigators that Katie was going to give Garcia $5,000 for the murder.
$5,000? You're murdering someone for $5,000?
$5,000. Doesn't that seem crazy? I mean, maybe she's getting like the baby mama discount on a hitman.
How much
so
did
$5,000?
Sorry, this is old news, but how much did Wanda Holloway try to give? I know,
I'm pretty sure it was gonna be like 10 or something, and she goes, that's too much, I'll pay you like 5 and just murder the mom. I'm pretty sure like
back in the day.
And that was back in the day, right? Hold on, now I want to look that up. Hold on.
Sorry, that just made me
I bet you I still have it right here. Because literally you said that, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a good question. Hold on, I bet I have it right here.
$5,000? That I can risk my time for that.
So this was back in 1991. If you guys haven't listened to Wanda Holloway, which is what, like episode 2, maybe?
3.
It was going to be $2,500 to kill the mom and $5,000 to kill the daughter, and she didn't want to spend the extra $5,000, so she only paid the $2,500. And this is back in 1991. So yeah, like $5,000 for a hired hit nowadays, especially because they're having to drive all the way from Miami to Tallahassee, that seems a little cheap. But like I said,
any number is not okay. So as we debate on if 5,000 is a lot or little, we know that no number to go murder someone is an okay number.
It's
but
never
you guys
okay.
have to agree with us that $5,000 does not seem enough if you're going to risk your freedom to go off someone.
Right. And your soul for
mind.
having taken the life of another human being. $5,000 doesn't seem like enough. So Rivera tells the investigators, he says, the whole trip, Sigfredo Garcia is texting and calling and talking to Katie Magbanua, and that as they're leaving Tallahassee after they'd shot Dan, Garcia calls Katie and he's like, it's done, where's my money? Rivera is telling them, like, okay, Katie's the one who did it. Okay, well, who the fuck is Katie? And how does she know Dan Markel? And what is her connection to this, again, this random professor who lives 6 hours from her? And what Rivera says is he doesn't really know. He just knows that Katie was Garcia's, like, on and off again girlfriend. And he goes, I don't really know the whole thing. All I know is it has to do with the lady wanting her 2 kids, full custody of her 2 kids. And then he says, and everybody knows that Katie, sorry, Terry, coming up here, that everybody knows that Katie is fucking the dentist.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. They start following Katie. They start trying to track Katie, who Katie is, why she would pay her baby daddy
she's showing up to
murder Dan. Who is she? What is the connection? And as they start to look into her, they find out that around the time of the murder, so you have to remember now, this is like 2 years later that they're looking at this. But what they find is at the time of the murder, Katie had a quote-unquote personal relationship with a dentist in the Miami area named Charlie Adelson.
The brother.
The brother.
Oh,
so,
man.
There it is. Psst, hey, everyone. It's just us in the middle of one of our own episodes. We have huge news we want to share with you all. We now have ad-free listening and bonus content.
Yep, you heard that right. We have a supporters club for exclusive VIP OG listeners like yourself.
Or if you just really hate ads, you can join us as well.
If you join the supporters club, you will get ad-free listening on every episode, 1 bonus episode each month, and a few other perks here and there.
You can find the link in the show notes to check it out.
All right, back to the episode.
Like I said, Luis Rivera was already in jail. He cops the deal. He goes, okay, I'll tell you about it. They arrested Sigfredo Garcia. They hadn't arrested Katie Magbanua yet, but they had the information on her. After the initial arrest, when Sigfredo Garcia was arrested and Luis Rivera was already in jail, officials finally unsealed the probable cause affidavit. And at first they were keeping it under wraps because in that probable cause affidavit, it implicated the Adelsons. It said that our probable cause for arresting Garcia is we think that there's motive because the Adelsons wanted Wendy and her kids to move back to the Miami area. That's the connection to Katie, that Charlie was with Katie. Katie is baby mama to Sigfredo Garcia. Garcia was the sugar man. And that's why we arrested him. Like I said, they kept that under wraps. They didn't want that out there, obviously, because there were more people, like there were more conspirators in this whole ploy, right? It wasn't just Garcia and Rivera who decided to go do it. So for months, investigators had actually already been listening in on the Adelsons. They had tapped all of their phones and they had come up with this plan. They had this plan. I think they called it the bump, where what they did was they got an undercover agent to approach Donna Adleson, so the grandma, to approach her and basically imply that he was a family member of Rivera's. And so basically, like, he walks up to her and he goes, hey. And she's like, you know, what do you want? And he's like, look, your family took care of, basically he goes, your family took care of Sigfrido Garcia, but my family was also there helping. My family, Rivera, is still owed something for what was taken care of for your family. Donna calls Charlie. And she's like, this guy kind of just came up to me. And when you listen to the phone call, they never say things outright because at this point, they kind of already have an idea that maybe they're being looked at or they're just really covering their tracks. She calls Charlie and she tries to explain to him in not so many words, hey, someone just came up to me and is asking me for money, basically. And then after that, Charlie meets up with Katie, who he's still been in, like, contact with. I don't think they were ever, like, official, I think, hooking up and whatever. But he meets up with Katie in person, and they'd been following him, so they're listening in on the conversation, and the audio is really bad, but basically, Charlie tells Katie, someone came up to my mom asking for money. You need to try to find this dude, find out who he is and what he wants. Tell him we'll meet up with him and pay him money, but we might just need to kill this guy. He basically says we might just need to kill this guy because he knows what he knows is not good. And then so they're trying to, like, find this dude.
Crazy.
Yeah. A letter shows up at Donna and Harvey's house. Somebody calls the dental office saying, my family, Rivera, still needs to be taken care of. And, of course, this is triggering a bunch of communication between Charlie and Donna, and Donna's calling Charlie, Charlie's calling Donna, Charlie's calling Katie, and they're all just trying to figure out, like, who the fuck is this person? And Charlie has an idea that it could be the cops. Charlie thinks they might be getting set up. So he's trying to talk in code, and he's sly about it and stuff. But the whole point of that was to try to force conversations and possibly someone let something slip, confession about the whole thing. But like I said, they were already, I mean, they're kind of smart. They already kind of thought, like, okay, we could be being watched. So they weren't saying a bunch of stuff over the phone. So they're still trying to gather more evidence. They're still trying to find more evidence that is pulling in Katie and pulling in the Adelsons. And they start looking into Katie's financials, and they find a bunch of money being passed to Katie from the Adelsons after the murder. So after the murder, she starts getting paychecks from their dental office, signed off by Donna, signed off by Grandma, but they never see her, like, going to work at the dental office. Right. There's no other records of what her job is there. They don't know, but she's getting regular paychecks. She also is they sign over the title of a car that was previously owned by Harvey, the grandpa. Also have a phone conversation of Charlie telling Katie that he's going to sign the family's boat title over to her. So she's going to own the boat. And
5,000 turned a little bit more than 5,000.
I know. So this whole time I'm thinking, she's getting regular paychecks, she's getting a car, she's getting a boat, and they find out that Charlie paid for half of her recent boob job. She's getting paid a bunch of stuff, and the trigger man is getting $5,000.
She was told a certain number. She knew that the other people would do it for
And I think like when they were looking at it, what I kept remember seeing was like 100,000 that they were, and she was only going to give him 5. They looked into her boob job, so they said that on social media they saw that after the murders she pretty clearly had a boob job, and when they went and found out where she got it done and found out how she paid for it, they were like, oh, she paid for half of it in cash, and then the other half got paid for by Charlie. So just imagine the conversation. So, hey, Katie, baby, look, this is their pillow talk. Katie, baby, what I need you to do, go ahead and kill my ex-brother-in-law so my sister can move down here, and I'll pay for half of your boob job. What is this? These people. So yeah, they have all this evidence that Katie is getting paid, and they're finally able to make a deal with Rivera. They were like, okay, you told us all this stuff. We need your testimony where you're implicating Katie. Like, we already got you and Garcia. We need your testimony implicating Katie. And he says, okay, now they have enough to arrest Katie.
Okay.
So Rivera's been in custody on other charges. He eventually pleads guilty to the murder, but he obviously gets a deal. So in 2016, he pleads guilty. He gets a deal that basically, like, he'll serve time for the murder, but concurrently with his other sentence that he's serving for the unrelated gang charges and stuff like that. And then Garcia was arrested in 2016, May 2016. And then finally in October 2016, they arrest Katie. And they actually said that the state offers Katie immunity for her crimes if she's willing to snitch.
Turn over Charlie.
She rejects it. She doesn't take the deal. But what's crazy is, during her trial, the two do go to trial. So Sigfredo Garcia and Katie Magbanawal, they go to trial. So they're arrested in 2016. They don't go to trial until 2019. But when they are in trial, Katie does eventually say that she thinks Charlie was involved. She doesn't say how, but both of them plead innocent. Both of them are like, we had nothing to do with it. Garcia says Rivera was the one that was doing all of it. Katie just says, it wasn't me. Eventually, Garcia is found guilty of murder and conspiracy to commit murder. But the jury actually couldn't come to a verdict for Katie. They had like a mistrial. They had like a hung jury. But when it goes to retrial, she does eventually get found guilty of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation to commit murder because she asked her baby daddy to do it. Finally, last year, in 2022. So this is 8 years after the murder, 6 years after the first arrests, 3 years after Garcia, the supposed trigger man, is found guilty. Finally, Charlie Adelson is arrested.
Good.
It took 8 years, but they finally arrest Charlie Adelson. And when you listen to the podcast, so this podcast, when it came out, Charlie hadn't been arrested yet. They talk to some of the prosecutors and they're like, what about Charlie? Like, it's very clear that at the very least, Charlie Adelson, if not the entire Adelson family, was aware and came up with this idea. And now all you've got in custody are these 3 minority people, and the one rich white guy is yet to be held accountable.
Right.
I mean, this is seriously, we've seen this a lot.
I know. Yeah.
But so finally he's arrested. He's charged with murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation of murder. He's denied bail, thank goodness, because he has enough money to fucking bounce and never be held accountable for this. He's denied bail, and his trial is actually set to start fall of this year. So fall of 2023. In his case, both Wendy and Donna, the grandma, are named as co-conspirators. But they deny their involvement and they haven't been arrested. But almost everybody involved in the case and a lot of the people, like family, friends, they all think it was Donna's idea. They all are pretty sure Donna, the matriarch, said, this is what's happening. And she got Charlie to play it through.
Damn, that's insane.
Yeah, so I will keep everybody updated.
Do for your grandbabies to be close
for
to you.
Real. What? I know, it's so crazy. And speaking of grandbabies, the crazy part is, like I said, Dan's parents, Dan Markel's parents, the Markels, they've tried to stay involved with the 2 children. They haven't really been given the opportunity, but what they did was they actually get a bill passed in Florida, because apparently Florida had pretty strict laws, but they actually get a bill passed in Florida where the grandparents can petition courts for visitation with their grandchildren if the living parent is found culpable by a criminal or civil court of the other parent's death. So at this point in time, Wendy hasn't been found culpable of criminal or civil in criminal or civil. She is listed as a co-conspirator, but she hasn't been convicted of anything. But they pass a law, actually, and it's called the Markel Act, where if Wendy ever does get charged or convicted, not just charged, but if she's ever found culpable, whether in criminal or civil, that she's responsible for Dan's death, the grandparents, his parents, will get visitation. Yeah. That is Dan Markel and Wendy Adelson.
That's crazy. It's just like twisted because for the entire middle of it, I was like, oh, this is random. Like totally went a different direction than I thought it was going to go. And the end of this, while you were talking about it, I looked up because I needed to put faces. Yeah. And definitely not the faces that I expected. And I'm just like, that blows my mind. First of all, Dan Markel looks like the kindest, most like genuine, gentle human ever. So that is, I mean, it's so sad anyways, but that is so sad. And then what the freaking heck? Like, what is wrong with people? And then, the brother looks like he has done many, like, lines in a row before whatever picture he's been taken. He looks cracked out.
They talk a lot about Charlie on this podcast, and this dude is a fucking psychopath. This dude is a psychopath. So the family, they didn't start off rich, but the dad's dentist business really started to take off, right? So it really started to do well, and eventually, like, the family comes into pretty good money, and then the son, Charlie, takes over. So it's really, you guys gotta go listen to this podcast. They actually interview the third brother, the oldest brother, Rob. I think his name is Rob. And he tells them, look, Charlie used to be this scrawny little thing, and then he got really into bodybuilding. And so they say that when they were listening in on his phone calls, the dude led this like crazy life. And this guy is a complete psychopath weirdo. He gave himself, I'm pretty sure, the nickname The Maestro. You're stupid.
That means his dick is so small.
Right? Like, this guy is not. So I used to listen. Okay, so it's so funny because I used to work with this dude who gave himself a nickname, and then he effing put it on a vanity license plate. There's just so much that it says about you. When, first of all, you nickname yourself something so stupid. Anyway, so he nicknamed himself the Maestro. By day, he's like, oh, I'm this high-end dentist or periodontist, whatever he does. I do surgeries. I do this and that. Oh, these investments will be good, and you need to go do this and that and the other. And then by night, apparently, like, he was really big, the Miami club scene. And I think that's how he met up with Katie, hanging out with all these, the Miami club scene, these people involved in this, that, and the other, and da-da-da-da-da, and like the drug world that comes in Miami, and blah, 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 blah. This guy is a straight up psychopath. They said that on his social medias, because he was really into like his bodybuilding and stuff. They said on social medias, like, he constantly had shirtless pics. I'm like, oh my god, you're the fucking murderers.
That is so funny. I mean, it's not funny, but just, I'm sorry. You gave yourself that nickname, instantly small dick.
Yeah, for 100%. 100%. He's the absolute worst. The question remains, what's going to happen to Charlie? I think that they have enough evidence at this point to definitely
keep him there.
Put him away for something, hopefully. But then the question is, okay, now what about the grandma? What about the grandpa? Because they did recordings of Charlie meeting with the grandpa. So we know that the grandpa knows about it. Even maybe not before, but definitely after the fact, grandpa knows about it. And what's going to happen to grandma, Donna? It's just so frustrating because at the end of the day, they did this. Okay, so this family Dan and Wendy decided they weren't going to be together anymore. Okay, fine. Now it should be about the kids. And instead of allowing, I mean, the kids were living a perfectly fine life where they were.
Parents, 50-50, yeah.
They were making it work. And instead of that, this Adelson family decided that they were going to be so selfish that not only were they going to rip the kids from what they had known their whole lives, but also they're going to take their fucking dad away.
Right.
And now they're sitting there without a father, and the whole rest of the family that they do know is now implicated, just piling. These poor children are going to grow up knowing that their fucking their mother's family killed their dad.
Because it's like, if it does come down to something where the whole family is convicted and taken down for it, the only other people are the ones that have been outcasted, Dan's parents, who have tried and are deserving at this point, but then also like
have been cut off.
Are strangers.
They don't know who they are
at this point, and that's so sad. I mean, it's gonna be better in the long run if that's what the situation is. It's really sad because, like, I really want to know, like, did Wendy know? With you saying how sincere she seemed in the video footage of her, which, you know, that's always, you never know how that's going to go.
Right.
But it's like, who knows if this brother, or even if the grandma was like, well, just figure it out, Charlie, you know, and Charlie goes, figures it out without saying anything else to her. Who knows? But maybe they were all in on it. That's crazy. What an insane story. You're going to have to follow up and let us know when that comes down to it.
For sure. Definitely have updates when the trial happens later this year.
I was going to say, when things happen, they don't typically do it in the area. I'm not close enough. I was going to say, man, I should take like, if I get
trip
set
down
for
to
jury duty, like, just take it.
The other thing that I was like, oh my God, at the beginning, I was telling you that she said her brother makes these jokes in bad taste. So literally the morning of the murder, Wendy had a television repair guy come to the house because she said the TV that Charlie bought her as a gift. So I think that like as a divorce gift, like, oh, you're getting a divorce, here's a TV. She said she even told the TV repair guy that day, because the TV repair guy was like, oh, how'd you get this TV? And she goes, oh, I don't know. My brother gave it to me. He gave it to me as a gift after my divorce. He said he looked into a hitman, but buying me a TV was cheaper.
Oh my God.
Do you believe that? Like, the day that it happened?
That happens all the time. And people, like, how many times do I randomly, like, man, I'm gonna punch that bitch in the face? Like, there's no foundation behind any of it until someone's found murdered in the seat of their car in their driveway.
All of a sudden,
that is insane.
So the trial, I think, was actually supposed to start like next month, but they had to push it back because the defense asked for a continuation because there was just hours and hours of all of the audio, because they had been tracking Charlie and like tapping his phones for months. All of that has to be given to the defense, and the defense has to have the time to like go through all of it. And so that's why they asked for an extension. Your fucking defendant, your client should have been trying to plan a murder, and then maybe you wouldn't be like having to go through all of it.
Hard to defend someone who does bad things.
Yeah, seriously. Seriously. I just hope, based on the evidence that they have, they should be able, especially all the money that's passing hands, they really should be able to make the connection, but you just really hope that at the very least Charlie, if not the rest of the Adelsons, if they knew and were involved, is held accountable. But like we've seen it so many times. The trigger men, they're in jail. Katie, she's in jail. Like these are not rich people who can afford high quality, fancy lawyers, even though Katie had a bunch of money because she was getting paid $100,000 or however much it was, that he is still held responsible even though he's going to have the resources to mount like a pretty good defense. So, we'll see. We will see what happens.
Very well done.
Okay, love you, bye!
Okay, love you, bye!
Welcome back to Like Mother, Like Murder. I'm here today with Rachel, my amazing co-host, because we have got some updates for you guys. about the Dan Markel case that we talked about back in March. Was it March?
It was March.
March of this year. Charlie Adelson, Wendy's brother, is finally on trial. During Magbanowa's trial, she did say that Charlie Adelson was involved and that he should be prosecuted. They had several pieces of evidence that linked Charlie to the crimes, but it took a while, 8 years after the murder of Dan Markel, before the grand jury would be able to indict him. He is charged with murder, conspiracy of murder, and solicitation of murder, and that's what he's on trial for. The pre-trial, there was a little bit of drama pre-trial because when the witness list came out, his parents, so him and Wendy's parents, Donna and Harvey Adelson, they were on the witness list.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually basically were trying to get out of it. They were like, we're not going to talk. Like, we don't want to talk at all. They were trying not to testify, and the judge ordered them and said, you have to come testify or you're going to be arrested. So clearly there's a reason they don't want to testify,
exactly.
Right?
They don't want to put their hand and be under oath and have to go up there and either tell the truth or lie knowing that they're under oath. So there's a reason they don't want to be there.
What do you think they said they would do if they got put on the stand?
Plead the fifth.
Yes.
I don't know why it took me so long.
That's exactly,
Yeah.
They basically said, if you put us on the stand, we're going to plead the fifth. So the lawyers were just like, fine, we're not going to put you on the stand. They were taken off because they said that they would just plead the fifth. But some other witnesses that are on the list to testify, Wendy herself,
mm-hmm.
Katie Catherine Magbanowa, and then both Sigfrido and Luis Rivera are on the list to testify. And remember, all three of them are currently in prison for this crime. Charlie Adelson, currently not on the witness list. We know that that's normal. He won't, but they will be using a lot of the wiretaps that they had in place during the investigation. They did jury selection that started last week on the 23rd, and then the opening statement for the trials began late last week on like the 26th. And so prosecution pointed to the fact that Charlie Adelson, there's a lot of evidence that he's kind of the mastermind behind all of this. This all kind of stemmed from the Adelson family and not necessarily from Katie Magbanowa. In the defense's opening statement, they also brought up, if you guys remember, where Wendy Adelson, in her initial interview with police right after her ex-husband was murdered, said that her brother had made a joke that buying a TV for her was cheaper than hiring a hitman. And so they bring that up, and they bring that up as a joke, and they're kind of leaning into the fact that Charlie Adelson is that kind of guy. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, he talks a lot and he's a joker, and we're not going to dispute that. He did make this joke, but it was a joke. And then basically the defense's whole argument is that Magbanowa was the mastermind, that she facilitated all of this in order to blackmail Charlie. So Charlie and Katie Magbanowa, they were dating, they were together, and what the defense is saying is that when she found out that they were having issues with Dan Markel, when she found out that the Adelsons literally said, just pay him $1 million so that you can take the kids, Katie kind of saw that as an opportunity. And she basically solicited from her baby daddy, and then he got his friend to help. They killed Dan Markel without Charlie knowing. And then after the deed was done, go back to Charlie and say, we did this. Now give us money or we're going to say it's you.
Right.
Okay. Their defense is that Charlie is basically being blackmailed by Katie. It's interesting, right? Whenever you watch lawyers, and you guys can see like a lot of this trial on court TV, you see lawyers like on TV, but like you watch this defense lawyer, and he is just do yourself a favor. Go watch some of the clips of the defense's opening statement, because it's a trip. One of the first witnesses they bring on, literally the first day of trial last week, they brought on Wendy.
Oh, really?
And she basically said that the right people were in jail for this crime already, talking about, the 3 that have already been convicted. And she denied her family's involvement at all. And she says that she found out that day, the day of the trial, in the prosecutor's opening statement and the defense's opening statement, that Charlie knew about who murdered her ex-husband earlier than she thought. She didn't know that supposedly, allegedly, according to the defense's thing, that Charlie found out the day after the murder or whenever, because he was going to be blackmailed for it. So the other thing that's interesting, you can watch them questioning her in court. She is considered the state's witness. She's on the witness list for the state, but they're almost treating her like it's almost like a cross-examination, because the prosecutor's hammering her. And she's saying, your family was involved. She even talks about her book. And Wendy had wrote a book, supposedly a fiction book, about a woman who had to move. And so Wendy had supposedly
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, so she had wrote a book about a woman who had to move to Florida because her husband got a job, and how unhappy she was there. Yeah, so they asked her about, is this supposed to be you? And she's like, no, it's not supposed to be me, but it was clearly
it made me straight up think of Corey Richins in that situation. That's why I was getting confused just now. I was like, no, I don't remember a book. So one of the things I want to add right now, it's kind of like a question and kind of a statement, I guess, but this makes me think, so obviously, in her head, if Charlie gets convicted, she's next, right?
Oh,
because
exactly.
There's no way that he's going to be involved and then she's not going to be tied into it, right? So she's going to do everything on her part to try to have him not be convicted, even if for some reason, she knows. It's just one of those things where she's trying to keep herself clean, and it's not going to happen. So
you are 100% correct, because basically, being the state's witness, she's offered almost like a deal that says anything that she says on the stand is, quote unquote, it's immunity. However, it just applies to her testimony. So if they find any other evidence after the fact, or anything from anybody else's testimony during this trial, they can still use that against her. Right. It's just nothing she says can be used. But like you said, she's not saying anything. She's not blaming, she's not putting anything on her brother, because I agree with you. The next step, they're definitely going to look to her, and for sure to the parents as well, because Donna, the mother, is brought up a lot. She's a common theme because
she wanted her grandkids to be closer to her, and she was going to do anything within her power, financially, all of it, to get them to be there.
And I will tell you about some of the really interesting, I guess I'll say, text messages that come out in this during the initial days of this trial that really are pointing to what you're saying and about Wendy and Donna. So the other thing about Donna, part of the prosecution's evidence too is that Donna had written almost, I think it was up to $17,000 worth of checks to Katie. Donna's definitely involved somehow. So then Wendy Adelson, she took the stand. Then they get Katie Magbanua to come and take the stand. And at this point, right, Katie is already convicted. She's convicted for life without parole. Her, that trial has happened. But now she's kind of changing her story. She is a state's witness. So when the defense comes up and starts to question her, and it's kind of a dick move from the side of the defense, you're trying to make her squirm, because at this point she's now saying that no, this was all because before she keeps changing her story. And so this is what the defense said. He literally is asking this woman, and I'm not saying she's a good person. She what really sucks is her and Sigfrido Garcia, I think they have 2 kids, and now they're both in jail. So I don't know. I feel really bad for her kids, but she's definitely involved in this. She knew what was going on, whether or not she was the one who planned it. She was a willing participant in this. But basically, the attorney, he turns to her and he says, there are only 2 ways that you get out of prison: in a coffin or by turning in Charlie Adelson. So what are you doing? And oh my God, that's really rough.
Like, that is crazy. I mean,
say.
So yeah, they are going to say whatever they need to say. Some people take things too far, but no, she's not getting out of prison. She went to prison for life with no parole. So,
yeah.
I mean, the likeliness of that anyways, I would just laugh in his face if I were her, to be honest.
Yeah. So he's basically trying to say,
we can offer you something.
Well, he's saying that you made a deal with the prosecution that if you turn in Charlie Adelson at this trial, that you'll get some kind of deal. But she doesn't have a deal. She's already been convicted. Her deal passed. They gave her a deal. The very first trial she had, she didn't take it. She was kind of ride or die at that point. And now during this trial, she's basically saying, I want the truth to come out. And the truth is that, like, Charlie was involved in this. So she does have an appeal pending for her case. I don't know about that appeal. My only thought is that maybe the sentencing will be lighter, but she's still a willing participant in a conspiracy to commit murder and for solicitation of murder. And because Dan Markel was murdered and she was part of the crime, she's convicted of that murder too. So maybe she'll get life with the possibility of, I don't really see a difference in that. So remember, I was telling you about these text messages. Okay. So they have a bunch of texts between everyone, mostly like the Adelsons. But if you guys remember from the original episode, when they actually shot and killed Dan Markel, that was the second time that they had been up to Tallahassee. They had gone up like about a month prior, and they scratched the plan. They kind of got cold feet. They didn't want to do it with his kids around. He had his kids and stuff like that. And they scratched the plan. And then right after that June trip where they decided, okay, we're not going to kill him this time, there is a text from Donna to Charlie right after this saying, quote, I know you'll come through. Hey, Like Mother, Like Murder listeners, just want to hop on and remind you, we are months away from CrimeCon and we have big plans. We want to advocate for some of the cases that we have been covering on the pod. But to really do this and do it right, we need your help. Please visit the link in the show notes to donate to your favorite true crime momcast CrimeCon 2025 fund. Okay, love you, bye. And that, I mean, okay, yes, circumstantial at best, but I mean, like, if I was a jury, I'd be like, oh, what are you, then if you're not talking about this, what are you talking about? Like, let me know what that text was about. Like, that's so him to bring sketchy.
Her some groceries. I know
you'll come through on those special apples I need from the store, right?
No. Delivery.
This one is really interesting. So there's a text from Wendy to her ex-husband, Dan Markel. From what I kind of understood is that they know that when Wendy sent this text, it was when she was down with her family. So they know she was around Charlie at the time. And the text is asking Dan, are you in Tallahassee from this date to this date? And the way that the text is coming off, because I'm hoping I can pick up the kids on so-and-so date. But the dates that she's asking, are you in Tallahassee from this date to this date? Include the date of the murder. Yeah. So that's a little sketch as well. But again, I mean, any co-parenting relationship, you're probably constantly, you know, going back and forth on dates when you're trying to plan things out. So,
Absolutely.
But it is sketchy that she's asking him specifically about these dates, and that's the dates of the murder. Okay. And then they have a bunch of text messages between Catherine McBanawa and Charlie Adelson, that are all lovey-dovey, love you too. Oh, you're the best. I know how to make you smile, all this stuff. When supposedly she's blackmailing him. The defense's whole thing is that Charlie is being blackmailed and his life is being threatened, that if he doesn't pay up, they're going to come after him like they
you're going to do
Dan.
that to someone that you love so much, and that
Exactly.
you're being very romantic and sentimental and all of that.
Exactly.
We don't think so.
I don't think so. So that has been all of the testimony literally up until last night. So you guys, we're recording this on Halloween. We're going to release this tomorrow. There'll have been one more day of testimony, which I will be watching tonight. I promise. and we will keep you guys updated on this trial. But the prosecution really came out strong with their witness list. They are not slow rolling this. They are getting right into the nitty gritty. And I'm really interested to see. I mean, we mentioned it on the last episode, on the original episode. Like, I think it's insanely crazy that the 3 people that are actually charged and convicted of these crimes are all low income, minority, you know, not the rich white doctor, pretty much, right?
The one who probably found those people to do it for him, and was the mastermind behind it.
Yeah, so it will just be really interesting to see what else comes out in this trial, and I am holding my breath to see what happens, not only with Charlie, because it really does worry me. We've seen it many times before, that the white guy's going to get off because he has good lawyers and he has a bunch of money behind him. But I'm also interested to see after this trial, like you kind of said, are they then going to go after Wendy and the parents? We will see. One other
like
really,
that's happening.
I hope it does, because I think for sure there's knowledge at the very least. And if she's not doing anything, especially on Wendy's part, look, I get how unhappy maybe you are in the situation or whatever, that you want to be closer to your family and the kids and stuff like that, but you're literally taking away their father, who was a good father.
Right.
He was a good dad. And because of your selfishness, you took away their dad, which is crazy. If you knew about it, allegedly, if you knew about it. The last thing I want to kind of end on is kind of sad. Dan Markel's parents, you know, have been involved in this since the beginning, and they tried their hardest to stay involved in the kids' lives, and you know, the Adelsons made that a little more difficult than it needed to be. But Dan Markel's mom is at the trial; she is watching everything. But oh, I'm getting goosebumps whenever they're talking about the autopsy, when they're showing like pictures of the crime scene, she does step out. Because she said she doesn't want that image in her head. Yeah. And she she wants to maintain the happy images of her son.
Right.
So that part is really rough, but all the power to Dan Markel's parents, and just hoping that it will get to a place where justice is found for their son, and where I know what they're really hoping for, that they can eventually see and spend time with their grandkids, because at this point, that's what they have left of their son, is them. And the Adelsons are not making that easy, right? So there you have it. Updates. Dan Markel, Charlie Adelson on trial, and we'll keep you updated. Okay, love you, bye.
Okay, love you, bye. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Like Mother, Like Murder. For a quick update on a case we covered, I just wanted to let you all know Heather is traveling for work, so we didn't get to record this update together, but it needed to come out right now, and we cannot wait a day longer. So here she is.
Okay, so first things first, a very quick sorry, because I know it took me a few days to get this update out. I know this is big news, but I have literally been traveling and I am at the airport right now. So I'm sorry if there's a little bit of background noise, but I just could not wait any longer to get out these updates. So this is an update on the Dan Markel case and the trial of Charlie Adelson. If you have not already, go back, listen to our episode on Dan Markel and Wendy Adelson. Go back and listen to the first update that we put out on this case, and then you will be all caught up and ready to hear what I have to tell you. So Charlie Adelson took the stand last week, and he continued this defense theory that Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia pretty much had taken matters into their own hands after Catherine Magbanua had told the two of them that the Adelsons were having all these issues with Dan Markel over the custody of Dan and Wendy's kids, and they decided to kill him on their own and then go back and extort money from Charlie Adelson, basically saying, pay up or what happened to Dan is going to happen to you. And he goes back and forth. He says he thought at first that Katie Magbanua, who was his girlfriend at this time, was, in a similar situation, that they did this kind of without her knowing. But then later he kind of goes and says, oh, maybe she was the mastermind behind all of this. Anyway, Adelson actually took the stand, which if you follow true crime, you know that a lot of times they do not let the defense take the stand for their own trial. But Adelson obviously was cross-examined, and the prosecutor brought it. She was amazing. You can watch the trial on Court TV, and she brings up the text between Charlie and Catherine Magbanua, which are, like I said before, super lovey-dovey, and this is interesting considering he's supposed to be being blackmailed by her. On top of this, he's offering to pay for trips for her. He's offering to also pay for trips for her family, including her baby daddy, who is one of the hitmen, which doesn't make any sense, especially considering he says that guy hates him because, he's with his baby mama and everything like that. And then there's also a text they bring up from Katie to Charlie where she's referring to how Charlie has been treating Sigfredo. And she basically says in the text, don't be such a dick to someone who has done something for you. So again, this doesn't make any sense that he didn't know that this was going to happen. So anyway, after closing arguments happened just this past Monday, it does not take long at all, within the same day, for the jury to come back and convict Charlie Adelson on all counts: conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation of murder, and murder. And the prosecution, they brought up a really good point too, is that, this extortion makes no sense. And luckily the jury also agreed with that, because the whole truth of the matter is, they didn't need to kill Dan Markel to extort money from Charlie Adelson. They could have just said, pay us or we're going to kill you. They didn't need to kill Dan Markel to make that happen. And the prosecution pointed out that during all three trials of Luis Rivera, Sigfredo Garcia, and of Magbanua, that Charlie Adelson never came out to say this wasn't just murder, this was extortion. And he never comes out to say Katie, even when she had her mistrial, he didn't come out to say Katie was a mastermind behind the whole thing and she's also extorting me. Or he didn't come out to say hey, she's a victim too, they did this without her knowing as well. He never comes out to say any of that stuff. So just, again, he's super guilty. Jury believes so too. He was found guilty on Monday. And remember, you guys, that Dan Markel was actually murdered in July of 2014. So this is 9 years later that he is finally convicted. But we know that's not always the end. So there are some things to look forward to in this case, you guys. He's a rich white guy, so, his defense team has already filed a motion. And basically, they caught wind that the jurors allegedly started a group chat, which is a big no-no. You're not supposed to kind of fraternize with your other jurors. And so basically they'll look into what this accusation that the jurors had started a group chat. And if it's something small, hey, let's all start a book club or something like that, then probably nothing will happen. But if they talked anything about the case in that group chat, that's definitely grounds for some kind of appeal. So we will have to see what happens. There's still a few other things we're waiting on in this case. The sentencing of Charlie Adelson. All of the others were sentenced. I think Catherine Magbanua and Sigfredo Garcia got life. Luis Rivera, because he was the first one to turn, I believe he only got a couple of years, a couple decades. And then we've talked about this before too, but what is going to happen to the rest of the Adelson family, especially the parents of Charlie and Wendy, who they've already said, if you put us on the stand against our son, we're pleading the fifth. So I'd be really interested to see what they are going to do when they get put on their own trial, because I really think it's going to happen. But that's all I have for you guys. Again, sorry it took me a little bit, and sorry if you can hear the airport in the background, but I just didn't want to wait any longer to get this out. Okay, love you, bye.
All right, you guys, there you have it. I have some theories brewing myself. Honestly, my prediction as of right now on this recording is that Wendy is next, with Donna and Harvey Adelson following right behind her. I truly wish that that was not the case and that things like this did not happen, but here we are. I just want to take a second to say that we at Like Mother Like Murder hope that Dan Markel's children are living a life that is full of love and support from those that are there for them. They have been through so much, and my heart, I feel for them. They're in my thoughts when it comes to all of this, as well as Dan's family and friends. Talk to you then. Okay, love you, bye. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Like Mother Like Murder with yet another update episode in the Dan Markel case. So here is Heather with the most recent developments in connection with the 2014 murder of Dan Markel.
Okay, we are back, everyone, with another Airport Adelson update. This is Heather. I'm currently sitting in the Atlanta airport on my way back home, but again, I have to get you all this information because, oh my gosh. So we know last week Charlie Adelson was convicted for the 2014 murder of his ex-brother-in-law, Dan Markel. If you all remember, the latest was that his defense team was going to try to interview jurors about an alleged group chat, hoping that this would maybe help in some kind of appeal to his conviction, but judge denied it. In bigger news, though, Wendy Adelson's mother and matriarch of the Adelson family, ex-mother-in-law to Dan Markel, and, of course, the grandma to Dan and Wendy's two sons, she was arrested. She was arrested. This arrest comes after some jailhouse recordings of calls between her and her son Charlie after his guilty verdict last week. And in these calls, she talks about making trusts to care for her grandsons. She references potentially suicide, and she talks about running. She talks about fleeing to a non-extradition country. And remember, this is a rich family, so they can totally do this. We've been saying since the beginning that this was a possibility, that the grandparents, especially Donna, would be implicated. Remember, they even said if they were called to the stand during Charlie's trial, they would just plead the fifth. So it happened. They charged Donna. She was arrested. She has the same charges as Charlie: solicitation, conspiracy, and murder. And she was... You guys, she was arrested at the airport. She and her husband had one-way tickets to Vietnam. They were trying to go to Vietnam. She's arrested at the airport. Interestingly, though, her husband, Harvey, was actually not arrested. So it seems like they definitely have more information or more evidence that implicates Donna more so than Harvey. She had her first court appearance yesterday. So she is being held without bond. She needs to be sent back to Tallahassee before the rest can proceed. But The arrest warrant was released. It has a bunch of details on the case, most of which we already know just from the previous court cases of the 4 people already convicted for the 2014 murder of Dan Markel. But it's big news. Like always, like Mother, like Murder, we'll be here to update you, just hopefully not from an airport again. We'll be at home with a real mic and not just my iPhone. That is it for now, though. Had to make sure you guys had the latest. Talk to you later. Okay, love you. Bye.
There you guys have it. We know so many of you guys have been following along with this case just like we have. So thank you, Heather, for bringing us the latest. Quickly, while I have you guys, if you have been listening to Like Mother, Like Murder and wanting more, be sure to subscribe to us wherever you are listening now so that you can have the show pop up directly into your podcast feeds. And remember, the best way to help a show grow is to leave a rating or review so that others can find us as well. We hope you are all having a great week. We will talk to you on Tuesday with our regularly scheduled episode. Okay, love you. Bye.